Hello and welcome into another episode of Friar Territory here on the Foul Territory Network. I'm Kyle Glaser. We'll be with Heath Bell in just a second as we go through our 2025 MLB season preview. But before we do that, I wanted to start the show today by talking a little bit about Bryce Miller, the San Diego Union-Tribune sports columnist who tragically passed away over the weekend at the age of 56 after a multi-year battle with bladder cancer. Bryce Miller was a very, very talented writer who could handle anything thrown at him, whether it was covering baseball, college basketball, to golf, horse race in the outdoors. He really could write about anything and write about anything well, which is a testament to his skill. But the main thing I wanted to talk about today and pay tribute to is who he was as a human being. Bryce Miller was genuinely one of the kindest, most decent people you will meet, and is someone that I wanted to make sure everyone fully appreciated. Um, he's the type of person we could use more of in this world. I first met Bryce when he was hired by the UT as the new columnist toward the end of 2015. I was still in my early 20s, or I guess mid 20s, on my first year on the Padres beat for the Riverside Press Enterprise, and Bryce was the new columnist in town who was 20 years my senior, working for the main paper. I was a young beat writer working for the secondary paper. He could have big time me, and there are a lot of people in this industry who do that, but not Bryce. Right away, introduced himself, got to know me, generally seemed to care about who I was, where I worked, what my background was, and again, just a really, really nice man. Got to know him more and more through the 2016 season, my second year on the Padres beat, covering games alongside each other in the press box and in the locker rooms and on the field at Petco Park. And then when I moved to North Carolina after Baseball America hired me midway through the 2016 season, I was still flying back all over the country as a national writer and was back in San Diego a couple of times a year. And every time I did, Bryce was the first person to welcome me back and ask me how my wife and I were enjoying the move, asking me about my family. Just again, always a kind, genuine, caring, decent person. And it continued on after we moved back to California in 2019. He was one of the first people to welcome me back after I had my daughter in 2021. Whenever I saw him, his first question was always, "How's fatherhood? How's your daughter? How's your family?" Just again, someone that I think was just one of those rare, true, kind, genuine, caring people in this world. And over the last few years, especially, my press box seat in the Petco Park press box was just a couple seats down from his on the right side and front row right side. And there was rarely anyone in between us. So even though there'd be three or four seats between us, he and I would be talking a lot throughout the games, what was happening, what we were seeing. And over the course of a decade of working alongside each other in some form or fashion, he became one of those people that I truly enjoyed seeing every time I was down there. It wasn't like we were there all the time. Again, there are many, many, many people who knew Bryce for a lot longer than I did. And there are many, many, many people who worked much more closely alongside him than I did, particularly all of his colleagues at the UT. Between me being a national writer bouncing around everywhere, him being a columnist kind of bouncing around everywhere, we'd see each other a couple times a year whenever our paths would cross at Petco Park. But whenever they did, again, he was someone that always brought a smile to your face and asked about you and your family and how you were doing. And again, one of those people you truly enjoyed being around. And there is a need for more people like Bryce Miller in this world. And I think it's important that everyone knows, his legacy is that of a good, kind, decent human being. And, one of the things that, I've been struggling with since his death was I did not get a chance to tell him how much, I appreciated his kindness, his warmth, his friendship over the years, again, from time I was starting as a young beat writer to getting married to moving across the country to having my first child. Throughout it all, he was always someone that was always asking. And, we got together a few times outside of the ballpark as well. And, I didn't get a chance to tell him that, I always appreciated everything. And, you know, it's something that, I've been struggling with these last 48 hours, or not even 48 hours since news that he passed emerged. So, what I want to leave everyone here with is, if there's someone in your life that has made you feel welcome, that you care about, that if they were to be gone tomorrow, it would hit you hard, make sure and tell them. Make sure they know that. Um, I think that there are, unfortunately, few people in this world who are genuine, kind, and caring. And if there is someone out there in your life that's like that, make sure you acknowledge that and let them know how much you appreciate it. Um, I didn't get a chance to let him know that before he passed. And even though I knew he was not doing great, I didn't get a chance to formally say goodbye or thank you for everything. And that's something that, again, has been eating at me for a little bit. So in honor of Bryce Miller, again, I want to ask everyone out there to, if there's a good, kind, decent, hardworking person in your life, make sure you tell them that you appreciate them and that they mean something to you and that they've had a positive impact on your life. Um, it's too important, and don't let that opportunity pass, because you never know who's going to be here tomorrow. So with that, we will be doing the show today. Heath and I will be breaking down the 2025 Major League Baseball season. But as we do so, Bryce will be in our thoughts and our prayers and our hearts. Condolences, of course, to his family and all those who knew him best. And again, Bryce Miller, San Diego Union-Tribune columnist, he was a good man and someone we should all aspire to be like, and he will be missed.
Hair thinning is very common, very frustrating problem that many men deal with. From stress and nutrition to hormones to lifestyle, so many internal factors affect what you see on the outside. Luckily, Nutrafol is here to help.
Thinning hair is different for men and women, so a one-size-fits-all approach to their hair growth doesn't cut it. Nutrafol has multiple formulas for men and women that are tailored to different life stages and lifestyle factors.
Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand trusted by over 1.5 million people. See thicker, stronger, faster-growing hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol.
Start your hair growth journey with Nutrafol. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code FOUL. Find out why over 4,500 healthcare professionals and stylists recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code FOUL.
All right, we are here with Heath Bell to preview the 2025 season. Obviously, this is a Padres-centered show. However, the Padres are not playing in a vacuum, and it's really important to understand where they stand compared to the 29 other teams, just how they fit in the whole big picture of Major League Baseball, and ultimately what their odds are for making the postseason. So we're going to look at all the teams in the National League. We're going to touch on teams in the American League, because the Padres will play all 29 other teams this year, and it's important to understand, again, just where they stand in the pecking order and how they compare, so we can properly evaluate their projections for the season. Heath, the week of opening day is finally here. Again, the Dodgers and Cubs already played in Japan, but this is when real opening day is. Thursday, I'll be down at Petco Park for the home opener. I have to say, opening day is my favorite day of the year. Not Christmas, not Thanksgiving. Opening day to me is the best day of the year.
Opening day it's one of the best days of the year. I will definitely. Hey, I'll be at I was going to say Minute Maid Park, but out here in Houston, but it's not Minute Maid Park anymore. It's something else.
Did they change it from Enron? I mean,
it's not Enron anymore.
Well, I know that, but I was going to say, I missed that they changed it.
Somebody told me they changed it just last week, so I was like,
no longer the juice box,
and I didn't look at it. So, but anyway, I'm going to be watching the Astros and Mets play.
Okay, Daikin Park, huh? I will miss the juice box, one of the great nicknames in baseball. But I'll be down at Petco Park covering the opener. Should be a lot of fun. Heath, as we go into the 2025 season, look, the Padres in a lot of ways are in the most successful stretch in franchise history. They've made the playoffs 3 times in the last 5 seasons, something that they've never done. They've won a playoff series each of those 3 seasons, and they've had a winning record for those 5 seasons. This is a franchise that, for a long, long, long time, was really a non-factor. They would make the playoffs maybe once a decade. So this is really the first time that the Padres have consistently been a contender. We've talked about this a little bit, but coming into the season, I think what jumps out to me is the National League is very, very, very strong. I believe the 4 best teams in baseball all reside in the National League, and the Dodgers, Braves, Phillies, and Diamondbacks. And I think 6 of the 7 best teams in baseball reside in the National League overall. And so I think with that, with the Padres, this is a good team. But in the context of what else is in the National League, I do think this will be a very, very tough season. Again, just because there's so much talent. If Padres in the American League, I think they'd be maybe the 2nd or 3rd best team. In the NL, they might be 7th or 8th.
Well, it just goes to show you the National League is the best league out there. I mean, really, it doesn't really matter anymore because you have the DH in either league. And the one thing that I missed, you get to play all 29 teams every year now, so that you get to go to different cities. You don't have to wait every 3 years or whatnot to go to a different city. So, yeah, I agree with you. The National League, and actually the National League West is probably the best division out there. I mean, Central is pretty good, but the East is probably better than the Central. But the West, I mean, you have the Diamondbacks, you got the Dodgers, the Padres, and the San Francisco Giants. They're all, basically playoff contention, and the only team in the West is not doing really well is Colorado, and who knows what they might be conjuring up over there. In a couple of years, maybe they'll be really good.
Well, and the Rockies are always difficult to play in Coors Field with the altitude. So it's not like other divisions where you have kind of your last place patsy, like the Marlins in the NL East or the White Sox in the AL Central, where you feel a little better about getting those guaranteed wins. With the Rockies,
they know how to play in Colorado. And in AAA is Colorado Springs. That's way up there too, Mile High. So those guys, it's hard to condition yourself to go to Colorado, basically, because every time you leave Colorado, it's like a breath of fresh air because there was no air there.
Definitely. So with that, we're going to jump into our 2025 season predictions. For the record, I was the one who put these together. So if these end up being wrong, I'm the person to yell at, not Heath. But here are the 2025 projected standings in the National League. Heath, I want to start in the West with the Dodgers, 108 and 54. For me, this is one of the best teams of all time. At least they have a chance to be. And I think what's impressive about the Dodgers is they get hit by injuries every year. And they just have so much talent within the organization that they can really overcome anything. Again, we've seen Mookie Betts be injured. We've seen Freddie Freeman be injured. Last year they lost 8 starting pitchers. They still ended up winning the division and winning the World Series. This is an organization that has done a great job with scouting and player development. So they always have guys they can call upon to plug holes. Last year, we saw that with Landon Knack and Andy Pages. And they always have guys that they can trade to go get frontline players. We saw it with Jack Flaherty last year. We saw it with Max Scherzer and Trey Turner in years past. So looking at this Dodgers team again this year, I think this has a chance to be one of the best teams in Major League history. It would not surprise me if they go after the record of 116 wins in a season. I think they're capable of it. The only reason I went 108 is I feel like they'll probably back it down a little bit, rest some guys. But to me, this is the best team in baseball, and they really do have a chance to be one of the greatest teams of all time.
Yeah, the Dodgers, I hate to admit it, but they're basically the best team in baseball the last couple of years, and it looks like the next couple of years they're going to be the same way as long as their main guys don't get hurt. But then again, their main guys is probably, we're talking 7 guys on the team. Usually you talk about 1 or 2. So the Dodgers are going to be around for quite a while. I disagree a little bit with the Diamondbacks, Padres, and Giants right there. I really feel like if the Padres stay healthy, they're going to be number 2. But I really feel like all those teams are going to be in one win away from each other. It's going to be like one bad week, one bad series. They're going to flip-flop. I really think it's going to be a closer race. I feel like each team's going to win about 90 games, and it's just going to be basically who can stay healthy, to get in second place. The Diamondbacks, they have a lot to prove this year, where last year I feel like they came out, they were just tired from the World Series the previous year. The Giants kind of regrouped and went and signed a few guys. So, and the Padres, are doing, they're holding their own. They lost 1 or 2 key guys, but they got some good young guys coming there and understanding how to play. So I think they're going to be fine. So I just feel like it's going to be hard to predict who's in second, third, and fourth. I really think Colorado will be fifth, unfortunately. I hate to say that, but I hate to say anybody's going to be last place, but they might be just a bad team this year. I'm not saying that they're going to be as bad as the White Sox, but they might be. So,
well, I think with the Rockies, look, this is a team going through a youth movement right now, and they're in a very, very tough division. And I think your assessment is fair. I want to start with the Diamondbacks. I think the big thing with me for them is this was the highest scoring offense in baseball last year, and that was with Corbin Carroll not performing for half a season. They did lose Christian Walker. They did lose Jock Peterson. But 1 through 9, this is still a very, very dangerous lineup, which is something the Padres can't claim. The Padres 1 through 6, maybe 1 through 7 are. The D-backs, it's really 1 through 9. And the rotation is very, very good as well. You talk about adding Corbin Burns, one of the best pitchers in baseball, to Zach Gallen, one of the best pitchers in baseball. Merrill Kelly. Eduardo Rodriguez was never really healthy last year. I don't see him struggling again. When you look at Brandon Pfaadt and Ryan Nelson, the two guys who are really competing for that number 5 spot, both of them would be in the Padres opening day rotation, no questions asked. They would be the Padres, well, with Yu Darvish out, they'd be the Padres 4 and 5 starters. I just see a Diamondbacks that has a deeper lineup. They have a deeper rotation. They have a pretty good bullpen, too, with A.J. Puck and Justin Martinez. And the other thing, too, with them that separates them a little bit from the Padres in my mind is, we talked about this. The Padres have a lot of really good high-end players in the major leagues, but just because they've traded so many prospects for veterans in recent years, they don't really have anyone waiting in AAA that projects to be an everyday player they can call upon. The Dodgers have Dalton Rushing, who projects to be an everyday player. The Padres don't have that guy. The D-backs have Jordan Lawler, who projects to be a really good everyday big leaguer when he's ready. The Padres don't have that guy. So for me, the Diamondbacks, I think the Padres' star level talent absolutely matches up with the D-backs, but I see more depth in the D-backs lineup, in the D-backs rotation, and in their system overall. And I just think over the course of the season, that's going to pay off and make a difference.
Oh, I agree with you a little bit. It's one of those things that last year it was dumbfounded how good their offense was and how many runs they scored, more runs than the Dodgers.
Oh yeah,
and they just
everyone, Phillies, Yankees, Dodgers, everyone.
What I'm saying, they just couldn't put it together, and they scored a bunch of runs, but then just couldn't get the wins, or they scored 15 runs in one game and then lose 2-0 the next game. So it was probably frustrating for them. That's why I'm like, this is kind of a build back year for them to be like, hey, we know we can hit. We're better than this. That's why I think they were just World Series tired, last year, as in like, hey, we weren't supposed to be here. We had this amazing season. Hey, we can do it again. And you were just kind of running on fumes, even though your offense was hitting.
Yeah.
It just, the team wasn't working, wasn't together. We didn't have a nucleus. So that's why.
Well, I think we really saw with the pitching staff, they rode Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly really hard to the World Series, and Kelly didn't stay healthy last year. Gallen wasn't quite his normal dominant self. So I do expect to see them a little bit better this year, having a full of rest.
I have a funny suspicion, and my son hates it when I say this. I just have a funny feeling they're going to be within one game of each other at the end, and it's going to be literally who had the best last week of the season. On paper, Diamondbacks are definitely better than the Padres and Giants, and this is basically on paper. But there's a baseball thing out there of a gut feeling of just seeing guys and seeing how guys play. I mean, you can put the best team together, and they don't always play very well. They take some half a season or a full season to kind of all different types and stuff to kind of mesh together. And as soon as they mesh together, they're an awesome team. I mean, you could kind of say the Dodgers were in that aspect. They had a great players the last couple of years, didn't really mesh, but they were winning divisions, but couldn't do it in the playoffs. And then all of a sudden, World Series, but then it was kind of like tainted a little bit. And then, last year they just kind of, but then again, they were just, the Padres could have beat them, right at the playoffs. And if they didn't beat them, if they would have beat the Dodgers in the playoffs that round, who knows what had happened? And the Dodgers would have been the whole, hey, can't do it in the playoffs. But since they pretty much ran over the Yankees, it just, basically it was Freddie Freeman show. But, it was like, what's he going to do the first inning? Probably hit a home run. So.
Yeah, no, definitely a sliding doors moment again. The Padres, again, took the Dodgers, to the end. And I do think, as do many other people, that if the Padres had won that series, they would have won the World Series. Whoever was going to win that series was the best team left in the playoffs once the Phillies were eliminated. And I do think that whoever won that series would have been the eventual World Series champion, as does Dave Roberts and many others who, were there and on the field and have acknowledged that. I do think, we need to talk about the Giants here for a second. So, Padres at 87 and 75, and we're going to do a full big Padres breakdown here on Wednesday, where we'll dive really deep into them. But we've talked about, again, really, 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 I think the Padres are a good team. I don't think they're a great team. Again, really good top 6 in the lineup, really good top 3 in the rotation, top 4 when Darvish is healthy, really good back of the bullpen. But the bottom of the order is a little concerning. The rotation depth is a little concerning. The bullpen's okay, I think, and just the overall lack of in-house replacements for when guys get hurt waiting in the upper minors is a little concerning. But again, this is still a team that should score plenty of runs, that should get good starts, the top 3 spots in the rotation most of the year. And I really do think the Padres season, even more than any other team in the division, will hinge on health. In some ways, the trainer is going to be the MVP of the season this year. If Tatis stays healthy and Machado stays healthy and Bogart stays healthy and Arias stays healthy and Darvish stays healthy after this initial setback, then yeah, they could absolutely contend. But we know in baseball that if you have 6 or 7 guys you need to stay healthy, realistically only 3 or 4 of them are, and that's where having depth comes into play. I mean, Tatis missed 2 months last year. Machado was not right for half the year. Bogarts missed most of the first half. Arias played through a thumb injury, and they were able to survive it because they had some really good midseason pickups. They had some really impressive depth, guys stepping up like Kyle Higashioka. They just don't have that this year, and that's for me where I'm a little concerned, to where I do see them having a little bit of a come down.
Oh yeah, you hit it right on the nail. Where the Padres season is all going to be about health. If those guys stay healthy, I mean, you all plan on being healthy, and Machado is good to start off the season last year. I was big on just go on the DL to start the year off and then get healthy and come back. You're better at 100% than 80%. So, but no, every player thinks, hey, I'm just as good at 80, 90% than I am at 100, or I can do better than the next guy. But the Padres do lack depth. They don't have minor league guys. That's the one thing that, AJ Preller's, traded off, and he's got good keys, guys midseason, this and that, but it puts a toll on it. And there's not many guys in the minor leagues anymore for them to trade. You're not going to trade a whole team for one guy. And, you're going to really have to find the needle in the haystack when it comes to, mid relievers or a starter, because we're going to probably need a starter because somebody's going to get hurt. And we're going to need a mid reliever. We're going to need a bullpen spot somewhere it comes up. I mean, position player, I think we're okay. But like you said, we have I would say about 4 or 5 guys in the lineup that are pretty good. And then the back half of the lineup is, if they get a hit, we're tickled pink. We're happy. We're like, that's the best player ever. But, it's almost like, Jackson Merrill was like batting 6th, sometimes 7th. And it was like, let's keep him down there because it kind of keeps the batting order going. Where sometimes, if you're 7, 8, 9 guys not getting hits at all, it's almost like you got a free inning, 3 times a game that the other team's going to go, we just got to get to the 7, 8, 9 guy. It doesn't matter if bases are loaded. We'll get those guys out. So
you at any level, you can't win if you're giving away 3 outs every time to the lineup. And in fairness, the Padres' bottom lineup isn't that bad. There have been years where they have been, back when Austin Hedges and Alexi Amaristo were at the bottom.
But it's just the biggest gap. That's what I would think. You got really good guys, and then you got okay guys. You're not like, it's like Jason Hayward. He's a stud. He can get hot, but he's older. Where maybe he'll carry the team for maybe a couple weeks, and then can't do anything for a couple weeks. So.
Heath, you made an interesting point about the Giants, who I think that most people would consider to be not really a playoff contender. But you made the comment about seeing them as a team that actually you think will be right in the mix with the D-backs and Padres, and only 1 game separation. And if someone gets hot at the right time, maybe they could jump into second place. What has you so optimistic about the Giants?
Okay, so it's hard to explain, but you can see them as a team. When they go out there, it's kind of like they don't need a superstar on the team. They don't need a leader. They just go out there and one night this guy will win it, next guy that guy will win it. Next game the pitcher will come up big. And I'm not saying there's like no names over there, but it's just, if you just watch them, they remind me of kind of the Washington Nationals a few years ago when they won the World Series. They had some good guys, but they weren't super. Yeah, Rendon was there, but you could see how bad he is now. But and they had Strasburg and
they had Scherzer, they had Trey Turner. I think
my thing is the team wise, you just saw them as a team. They kind of meshed together. It kind of back in the Padre days when I was there in 2010. 2011, we weren't necessarily a good team on paper, but we meshed together and we did the little things. And I see the Giants doing that. The little things as moving the guys over, bunting. They might not hit a bunch of home runs, but they're going to do the little things that nobody takes care. Nobody really sees anymore. Nobody puts any stats on, hey, we drove that guy, over. We got him from first to third. We scored him from second, with the sac fly from, third to home. Little things like that. We take the extra base. That's what scares me about the Giants is they play baseball. And you can just see it in a little bit in spring training and last season. And I think they're just getting a little bit better every year. And that's why I kind of have them there. They're that dark horse that I see that they could show up. Now, I don't think they're going to win a World Series, but I definitely think they have a chance for the playoffs, and they could turn some heads when they get to the playoffs.
I actually have the Giants as my sleeper too. A lot of people are picking the Reds as a sleeper. Some people are picking the Nationals as a sleeper. I actually think the Giants are my sleeper. There's a sneaky good combination of veteran talent and young talent on this team. Matt Chapman, Willie Adames. They also have some really good young players. Heliot Ramos, Luis Matos, Patrick Bailey. They have a pitching staff that, if Justin Verlander and Robbie Ray are healthy, can be pretty dangerous to go with Logan Webb. And again, there's just a nice mix here. And to your point, they've looked really, really good in spring training. And I think they finally have the right mix in terms of style of play and mindset. Buster Posey coming in. Alden Gonzalez at ESPN had a really, really good story about, the identity Buster Posey is trying to bring back to the Giants. And everything he's talking about is spot on about what they need to do. The Giants were a very stagnant team for a long time. They're bringing back some of that energy. They're bringing back some of that athleticism. They're bringing back some little things that make a big difference. There's talent here. I think they now have the right organizational identity and mindset under Buster Posey. They have a really good manager in Bob Melvin. I do think the Giants are a sleeper. Again, they're not going to compete with the Dodgers, but I would not be shocked if we look up and maybe instead of 83 wins, they're at 87 wins, and they've taken some off with the Diamondbacks and Padres. And as you mentioned, they're all in the middle. I don't think it's a crazy assertion to say the Giants could pull a surprise and maybe jump all the way up to second. I have them fourth here, but I do think they're a sleeper and someone that, they should have a winning record. They've only had one winning record the last 6 seasons. I do believe that stretch will end. I do believe they'll have a winning record this year. I had them at 83 and 79, but I could see them getting into 86, 87 win territory with health, just like you said, doing all the little things. And we talk about depth as well. They also have a little more depth than the Padres do. Kyle Harrison got squeezed out of the opening day rotation. He would be the Padres' number 4 starter on opening day. So again, there's more depth here than the Padres have, which is something that's a little bit concerning. There's not the quite star level talent, but there's the depth.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the thing. And then also on a personal note, I'd love the Giants to do really well because it kind of shows Major League Baseball that, ex-players can be GMs and coaches and scouts, and we don't have to use all this cybermetric stuff. It will help us, but, there's some baseball knowledge in ex-players' brains that we would be good. We know what we're talking about.
Yes.
It's just not doing, funny podcasts and this and that. So, there's a lot of knowledge up there. Like you said, you're doing this thing. Who's going to be in first and stuff. This is all set on paper. And then, I can kind of see that, it's the Giants are definitely a fourth place team, but you never know. They've been kind of gelling together, and, Buster Posey gets the team back on, the Giant way, kind of, hey, this is how we play, kind of where this, the whole, back in the day, it was all, this is the way the Yankees do it. This is, you find that, identity, and it just comes up. And then, I think Buster Posey, everybody will, I think he's a very honest guy. He'll come down and tell all the guys. And then when the guys see him come and talk to him, they're kind of like, hey, this guy just played, 8-10 years ago, 5 years ago. He knows what it's like. He knows, playing against so-and-so like Machado, and stuff like that. So it's, that respect that I talk about, if the front office and players and coaches are all going the same direction, a lot of great things can happen.
Again, I do think the Giants will be in a much, much better place. And look, in any business, you have to blend the quantitative and the qualitative. Every tech company knows that. Every consulting firm knows that. Baseball, for some reason, has skewed so far to the quantitative and discounted the qualitative to teams' detriment. And the teams that understand it's a balance are the ones who are going to be successful. The Dodgers understand it's a balance, and the Giants, I think, with their new leadership, are going to understand it's a balance, and we'll see some really. I think we'll see much sharper, better, energetic, and cohesive play. And look, I mean, Heath, you can talk about it. So many teams right now, a lot of times in baseball, teams talk about finding the marginal advantages, the competitive edge. A lot of ways, the marginal advantage right now is just playing clean baseball. So many teams do not play clean baseball, and they give away outs and give away free bases.
Well, it's all about offense. Right now. It's all about strikeouts. It's not about getting the zeros up there. It's all about, getting a quality start, not getting the W anymore for starting pitchers. So it's just the game has changed, and I understand it's changed, and I kind of believe in some of the new things, but then some of the old things, it worked. Who makes
you play clean baseball? And that's the thing. A lot of teams are discounting that, and the teams that play clean baseball have a huge edge. And I think we'll see the Giants do that. And just to wrap up again, the Rockies, again, just a young team, youth movement, tough division. It'll be tough for them. This is the NL West. I mean, as we move into the other divisions, look, these are the teams the Padres are going to likely be competing with, because the Padres will be competing for a wild card. Again, the Dodgers are going to be division champions. I feel very confident saying that. So again, it's going to come down to not just how they're doing in the NL West, but how they're doing in relation to the rest of the National League. I want to start with the Central. This is an interesting division. The Brewers were champions last year. The Cubs added Kyle Tucker. The Reds brought Terry Francona in. The Cardinals are going through a youth movement, but there's actually still some veteran talent here, as well as some young talent. The Pirates, but they have one of the best pitchers in baseball, and some could argue the best pitcher in baseball, in Paul Skeens. I went with the Cubs as the Central Division champions. I just think this is a really good lineup, top to bottom, 1 to 9. It's a good top 3 in the rotation. They have some depth in their farm system. But the other thing, too, it's a little thing that'll help. I think their up-the-middle defense is going to be excellent. When you have Dansby Swanson, Nico Horner, and Pete Crow Armstrong, I think they're going to be a really good defensive team up the middle. They're going to be a complete offense 1 to 9, and they'll have enough pitching to be successful and win a division where there's a lot of good teams, but no great team.
Yeah, I agree with that aspect. For some reason, the Cubs just seem like the team that's going to run away with it. Not really run away with that division, but just probably the best team out there. I think the Reds have the talent, but just haven't put it together. For what reason? I don't know. I mean, on paper, you think, okay, they should be up there, but they just don't have that, identity as like the Giants that are putting a good baseball team together. It's like a bunch of stars, a bunch of rising stars, but they're not playing together. The Brewers are just always consistent. I think Craig Cancel has kind of kept them together, so it's going to be interesting to see really, going farther and farther away of how
well. Pat Murphy is their manager now. Council's in Chicago.
No, I know, but what I'm saying, how Council left the Brewers, and how he really kept the team together, and how he got that edge. He got the guys to play a little bit harder than, to win a little bit more than they should have. And that's kind of where I see it. And then Cardinals, I just think they're kind of like in a rebuilding stage, but not in a rebuilding stage. They still got some veteran talent, but they just, it's like night and day. I feel like the pitching is kind of it's good, but it's not great. And then the Pirates, who knows with the Pirates? They always have some really good players, but they just never do anything, or they just trade off their players. Like Paul Skeens, I wouldn't be surprised if there's trade talks this year about somebody pulling off a huge trade for them. So that's why you kind of have to put them at the bottom. But if I had to pick a team, I'm going to say the Cubs are winning this one. Like, I agree with you, but the Brewers will probably be right there just because they're a pretty solid team, but it should be the Reds that win that division, I think, but it'd probably be the Cubs, because I think it's because of Council, his quirky, I loved him going like this, hitting and all that, but I just think he's a great guy, and he gets the best out of his players. I mean, that's what he did in Milwaukee the last couple of years. And I think the Cubs understand, the GMs and the owners understand, hey, look, we won the World Series, and we weren't going to keep this going. We disbanded. We're kind of rebuilding. We kind of were in the shadows, this and that. And I think this is where this offseason they kind of went out. They got the manager they wanted, and they're ready to make another run at it. So I kind of feel like the Cubs are kind of there. They're kind of a streaky team that I feel like, you never know. They might get real hot in the playoffs and win. So it's just they're going to be a streaky team, I think.
Yeah, again, I think it's just a really good lineup, top to bottom. And it's a nice mix of guys, left, right, switch. They have contact guys, speed guys, power guys. It's not a one-dimensional lineup. They have a lot of different ways they can hurt you, which is important. And then with the pitching staff, again, Shota Imanaga, Justin Seal, Jamison Tyone, top three. They'll be in decent shape, and they have some good young talent as well in the farm system that they can use in trades if they need to go get some extra pieces. Guys like Kevin Alcantara, Owen Casey, former Padres prospect. So they're in good shape. With the Reds, they're interesting. They're a very, very talented young team. They're a very, very popular sleeper team pick. I just look at them and I just think the Cubs are a little bit more talented and a little bit more established. But the Reds are an exciting young team, and I think there's a lot of good young players that are going to be fun to watch, from Ellie De La Cruz to Matt McClain. I really like the Austin Hayes signings we've talked about. Once Spencer Steer and Tyler Stevenson get healthy, this is going to be a good lineup. I actually think Hunter Green is one of my sleeper Cy Young Award candidates. You can talk about young pitchers who can take the next step. He'll be up there. The Brewers are interesting because I look at this team on paper, and to be honest, I'm not super impressed. My main concern is they've had a lot of pitching injuries already. Brandon Woodruff is recovering from his shoulder injury in 23. DL Hall's gone down. Aaron Ashby's gone down. Tobias Myers has gone down already. So I'm a little concerned, but at the end of the day, you mentioned with the Brewers and their organizational strength, every year I kind of look at them, I'm just like, they're fine. They're not special. And then I look up and they've won 90 games in the division.
Well, they're just that solid team that you don't give any credit to. They're not horrible. They're not great. Like you said, they play clean baseball. They just play baseball. And then they're not streaky. They just, win a little bit here, win a little bit there. And before you know it, they're winning the division. So it's just kind of, the organizationals, they're probably going to be there at the end. It's one of those things. They shouldn't be, but they're going to be there. It's mind-boggling. You can't put it's 2 and 2 plus 2 plus 2 is 4. Where everybody else is like, no, it could be 5 if I do Common Core math and this and that. And they're like, no, it's 4. We're just going to stay steady, and they're just there. I mean, and I feel like Council got the best out of them, and now in Chicago, it's going to be see what he does out there. So it's going to be fun to watch. The Central has always been that. The Cardinals are the best team. The Cubs are the rival, this and that. The Pirates are kind of like they can win, but they don't win. They trade off players.
Yeah.
The Brewers are sometimes there, sometimes not, but they're always been a good, solid team for the last 10 years. And, they've been winning the division that nobody gives them any credit for at all. They're getting the playoffs. Yeah, they're losing the playoffs, but they get there. Yeah. It's kind of what the Cardinals did a couple years ago before they started winning it. So, yeah, it's just it's a solid team, but there's, like you said, there's no stars. There's no the Reds are going to be more fun to watch, but the Brewers probably will win more games. It's just, I don't know. I mean, maybe we're drinking too much in Brewtown, so I don't know. We forget about if the sports writers out there drink too many beers and forget about writing about them, so nobody else in the country sees about them, and they just oh, Brewers won. Ain't nothing exciting. Let's go have a beer. So, I don't know. Maybe that's what you guys do in Milwaukee. Who knows?
You mentioned the Cardinals, and for so many years, they were the standard bearer in this division, and in a lot of ways, the standard bearer in the National League. And it's still strange to think of them as, a sub 500 team that's in a bit of a rebuilding phase. Here have them, 80 and 82 in 4th place in the division. They're an interesting team because they have a lot of talented young players. They're just going to be giving more playing time, more consistent playing time to work through their struggles. Jordan Walker, Nolan Gorman, Victor Scott. These are young players who have talent. They're just trying to figure it out still. We've seen Mason Wynn be productive. Brendan Donovan's been productive. Ivan Herrera can hit. He needs to work on his defense. Alec Burleson can hit. I mean, they have talent here. It's just young and unproven. They still have Nolan Arenado, who they're trying desperately to trade, but haven't been able to. And the rotation's actually surprisingly veteran when you look at Sonny Gray, Eric Fetty, Miles Michaelis. again, I think it's fair to say that if those guys start performing really well, they'll likely be traded at the deadline just because that's where the Cardinals are. But this isn't like a young team that's just torn it all down and has no talent. It's just young guys who need consistency and ABs. And I think they'll be okay. Again, I don't think they'll be a terrible team. It wouldn't shock me if they're able to, sneak over 500, assuming these young guys click. And that's always a big if.
Yeah, I just feel like the Cardinals are going to be the team that everybody's going to go and pick apart during trade deadline.
Probably.
That's what I just see. They're going to play and then they're going to pick apart. And the Cardinals have to realize, with Aaron, what do they want for him? Or do they want they want a Rolex, or do they just, want, a regular watch that works all the time? So, it's one of those things. So it's just going to be what can front office make good deals, because you're not going to get, you're not going to get the world for him. This isn't like, Juan Soto with the Washington Nationals. That was an okay team, but, you have one of the best players, this and that. You can have a lot for him, but you're not going to get a whole lot. You're going to get one or two players, maybe two AAA guys that are not ready, but going to be ready in a year. So who knows? We'll have to wait and see.
And then, the Pirates, again, we have them in last place yet again. I think the thing with them, again, they have players to build with. Talk about a good young rotation: Paul Skeens, Mitch Keller, Jared Jones, top three. You have guys like Brian Reynolds, O'Neill Cruz, who's a freak of nature. You have good players, but this is an organization that just does not invest, does not spend enough to put a competitive team on the field. We've seen that under owner Bob Nutting consistently. And look, the Pirates have not signed a free agent to a multi-year deal since 2016. I mean, think about that. It's 2025. They have not signed a player to a multi-year deal. They've given some extensions, but a free agent. And you're just not going to compete. You can put in whatever systems you want. You can draft and develop as well as you want. But if you're not willing to spend money to add meaningfully to your team, nothing's going to change. So I think with the Pirates, again, even though this is a division where, there's no great team, I think there is pretty clearly a last place team. And it's a shame because the Pirates have some talent foundations that if ownership was willing to spend a little bit, they could start moving upward. And I think, unfortunately, they'll probably just stay stagnant and kind of be what they've been because nothing is meaningfully changing.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Like I said, Paul Skeens might be rumored to be traded midseason.
I don't think that will happen. Maybe in 2-3 years once he starts getting expensive in arbitration.
I'm just saying, it's just one of those things that there's going to be rumors out there. So
yeah, we'll see.
They might just say, if I was a GM, I'd be like, what can I get? Can I get Tatis, Machado? You pay for their contracts, and Jackson Merrill?
Well, the Pirates would never pay for their contracts, so that's part of the issue. But I think they're
Padres, you pay for the salary, and I'll give you Paul Skeens.
I would love to see those conversations between AJ Preller and Ben Cherington. That would be very interesting. But no, again, it's just they are what they are. Heath, wrapping up the NL here. The National League East is a loaded division. We talked about the NL West. You think it's the best, and I think there's an argument there because I think there truly are 4 deep teams where you can say, yeah, there's quality here. But I do think the quality at the top of the NL East, just when you look at, again, the Dodgers the best team, but what division has the best top 2 teams? To me, it's the East. I went Braves here, first place, 102-60, Phillies 101-61. Honestly, that's how I felt when I did it yesterday. This morning, I would probably redo it to put the Phillies up top. These are 2 elite teams that I think are not getting talked about enough, in large part because of everything the Dodgers did this all season. But you look at the Braves, and again, especially once Sean Murphy gets healthy, Ronald Acuna coming back from a knee surgery, 1 through 9, that's an explosive lineup. Even after losing Max Fried in free agency, this is a really good rotation. And the Phillies, I actually think probably, when I look at that lineup 1 to 9, I actually think they're the best lineup in baseball right now. And then one of the sneaky moves that I think has a chance to be one of the best in baseball, but didn't get enough attention, with their acquisition of Jesus Luzardo. 2 years ago, Jesus Luzardo was 25 years old, pitched almost 180 innings, had 200 plus strikeouts. Last year, he was just hurt. When healthy, this is one of the best pitchers in baseball, and he's in his prime in his late 20s now, mid to late 20s. All of a sudden, the Phillies have a potential rotation of Aaron Nola, Zach Wheeler, Jesus Luzardo, Ranger Suarez, Christopher Sanchez, and Taijuan Walker as a sixth guy, that's an insane rotation. I actually think that, again, I talk about the Dodgers have a chance to be an all-time great team. But if you put the Phillies in a short series with them, in a 7-game series, and the Phillies won, I wouldn't call it an upset. I'd be like, yeah, two really good teams were loaded and one had to win. And I think the same goes for the Braves. I think these are two just elite loaded teams that are the biggest threat to the Dodgers. And if they were to beat the Dodgers in a playoff series, I wouldn't call it an upset. I'd say, yeah, they're a really good team, and you get two really good teams together. Someone has to win, someone has to lose.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It's just in the playoffs, it's whoever's hot. I mean, the Braves and Phillies are neck and neck, just winning the division. I really feel like you said, it's, if you have the two best teams in your division in baseball, it's probably the East with Braves and Philly. Philly's just one of those places that where you play, it's such a small stadium where if guys come in there and try to hit a home run, they usually pop up. And where if the Phillies hitters literally, I mean, I've been in minor league stadiums, and you see in Philly, certain guys will try to hit a home run, and that's when they miss it. I mean, Jimmy Rollins used to say all the time, just hit the ball real hard. The ball will leave the yard if you just get it up in the air. It's just one of those things that I feel like sometimes in the playoffs, I see the Philly players trying to hit that home run to get them back in the game or whatnot, and they pop up or they strike out. And so I just feel like playing in Philly, you have a lot of pressure or whatnot for the fans because the fans are very vocal and this and that, but they're very passionate. I don't think they're horrible fans. It's just I feel like sometimes you just try to drop and drive too much. I see it, as a pitcher, you see hitters do that a little too much. Braves are a really good team. It's an average ballpark where it's kind of big, but not hugely big. And they just play baseball. And, Bobby Cox has the tradition and the motto of them just playing for years. And it seems like whoever the next 10 managers are, it's going to be the Bobby Cox way in Atlanta because they bring Chipper Jones back. They bring basically, if you were a Brave, they bring you back and help out the guys. So those two guys are going to be there at the end, definitely. The Mets are a third place team. I love the Mets. I came up through the Mets. They're my second favorite team over the Padres. It's just one of those things that I feel like the Juan Soto and this and that, everybody's going to be looking for him to do it. And I really think he had an incredible year in Yankee Stadium because lefties hit really well there. And it's a small ballpark. Citi Field is completely different. Those balls, some of the balls he hit as home runs would not be home runs. And the ball doesn't carry to right and whatnot. So then it's just, and I've seen him in spring training. He's not the best defensive player. There's a lot of room out there, and that might hurt the team a lot. And then the pitchers might get frustrated. The young pitchers, they have some really good pitchers there, but trust me, I understand when a guy keeps dropping the ball, especially in this day and age, when you have a DH, you're like, can he just DH and put somebody that can catch the ball out there? Yeah. Not saying Juan Soto's going to do that, but I've already seen spring training, so he might end up doing that. And then, I think Washington is a year or two away. They got some good young talent. I just think they're a year or two away. They might make some noise this year, but I don't think they're going to get to the playoffs. But I think they're a year or two away from really making some noise because you have the Phillies that are so good. You have the Braves that are so good. You have the Mets that have got a lot of good players and can go out and get free agency if they could. I mean, they almost got, whoever they wanted. It's just, do you want to play on the East Coast or West Coast? It's basically what the Dodgers and the Mets have been doing in free agency.
Yeah.
So Washington's going to have a tough hill to climb the next couple of years, but I see the good young talent that they have. So they're a year or two away to really compete against those guys and maybe be that dominant third place team. The Marlins are rebuilding. They're going to have some guys that are talented, and then it's going to be – I just hope the Marlins don't turn into what Pittsburgh does. Don't sign free agents, and as soon as they get a good talented guy, they ship him off and go somewhere else. I mean,
I think they're already there. I think they're already there.
It's just, I played 1 year for them. I didn't perform the best of my ability, and it's just any team I played for, I kind of have some pride for. Where I wish the Marlins would do a little bit different. They could rebuild and say, hey, it's kind of remember when who was it? Was it Rizzo that went to the Cubs? They said, hey, we're on a 5-year plan to win the World Series, and they did it in 4 years.
Yeah.
Kind of have the Marlins just say, hey, look, be honest with the guys. Whoever's GM out there, just say, hey, we're on a 5-6 year plan, and that's what we're going to do. But we're going to stick to this plan. And I don't like how like we got a chance this year. No, you don't. And we all know you don't. But be honest, hey, I got a 3-4 year plan, and stick to the plan, and you'll end up having a really good team where you'll have a chance to get to the playoffs, and you never know what's going to happen when you get to the playoffs. So that's kind of how I see the division. Honestly, I hate to say this, and I'm going to get blown up on X, and all my friends are going to text me, but I have a funny feeling the Mets are going to miss the playoffs this year.
So it's an interesting discussion with the Mets. I think with the Mets, they have a really good lineup, and I agree that Juan Soto's numbers will likely not be as good in Citi Field as they were in Yankee Stadium. But I still think, it's a good lineup where you have Francisco Lindor, you have Soto, you brought Pete Alonso back, Mark Vientos is a really good young player. Francisco Alvarez, once he gets healthy. I have some concerns about the pitching staff, the health, but when healthy, Kodai Senga, Frankie Montas, I think will have a better year. Sean Manaea, they have some guys like David Pierce and Tyler Miguel. I think they're okay, and they have a good bullpen. I think with the Mets, where they would have an edge over the Padres, because I think that these are two teams who realistically will probably be competing for the final wild card spot. Again, Braves, Phillies, Dodgers, Diamondbacks are all going to get in, I think, as well as your NL Central champion. And in my case, I think it's the Cubs, which leaves you with the Padres, Mets, and to a degree, maybe the Reds competing. And one advantage the Mets are going to have over the Padres is they're going to have weaker foes to play in their division at the bottom of the division. And I think that's going to be a separating factor. The Nationals are a team with some really, really good young talent, particularly on the position player side. They're pretty short on the rotation. I agree with you. They're a year or two away. The Marlins, I think, will be the worst team in baseball this year. Peter Bendix inherited a playoff team, stripped it down. I think Sandy Alcantara, the second that he starts pitching well, he'll be traded. I actually think the Cubs would be where he ends up because the Cubs have the position player prospects to give Miami. So I think for me, when I look at the Padres and say, okay, the bottom two teams in the West, the Giants and Rockies, are better, more competitive teams relatively than the Nationals and Marlins. So I think the Mets are going to be able to pick up a few extra wins against their bottom feeders in the division. The Padres aren't going to be able to get against theirs. And that to me is going to be the separator. It's nothing to do with the construction of the Padres and the Mets in and of themselves. I think the Mets are just going to have a bit of an easier schedule in terms of the Nationals are going to be easier to face than the Giants are, and the Marlins are going to be easier to face than the Rockies are.
I agree with that to some degree, but part of me, so here's the thing. We all play games. When we know we're supposed to beat somebody, sometimes we play down to their level.
Yes.
And say like the Marlins are going to play the Mets. They're going to try to beat the Marlins. That's going to be like their series. We can go into New York and beat New York, and this will be great, where the Mets are like, hey, we're supposed to win. If they don't perform and don't stay, tough and stay like, hey, it's 1-run game, even if they're up 4 runs. I see them losing a few games where the Padres, yes, it's exhausting playing all tight games, this and that. But when you need to win towards the end of the season, you're already battle tested. All the young guys are battle tested, as in, man, every game has been meaningful. It is exhausting, but if you just keep your mindset, let's just win every inning. But every inning is mentally, at the end of the season, they're gonna have a really long nap. They're gonna be really tired. Where say the Mets won't be, because they have some games that they should be just thumping those guys. But those are what happens. September comes and those teams you're supposed to win, you don't win because you just like, oh, okay, we can beat these guys. We have our ace. Then all of a sudden you don't score any runs and you lose 1-0. You're just like, how the heck did that happen? So that's just where I worry a little bit with the Mets, as were the Padres. And I'd say the Padres, but I agree with you. They're kind of in the same boat. They're going to probably be shooting for the wild card spot at the end. But I think the Padres will be a little bit battle tested, just because the Mets have those 2 weaker teams. But you never know. It's going to come down to health with both teams. Really, that's really what's going to happen, because there's not a whole lot of depth in either organization. And if the players can stay healthy, they're probably going to be there. If they don't, they're not going to be there. And they might have to trade away some of their – here's the difference between the Mets and the Padres in that aspect. If the Padres don't do well this year, midseason, they're trading some guys. The Mets, I don't see them trading guys to get better.
That is a very, very fair point. The Padres have a lot of guys who will be free agents at the end of this year that if things go south, they will probably be on the trade block. Dylan Cease, Michael King, Luis Arias, Robert Suarez, probably potentially. So there's no question. So Heath, wrapping up here our NL predictions. Where I have it is, Braves, Phillies, Cubs, Dodgers, Diamondbacks all get in. And the Mets are in as the final wild card team with the Padres as the first team out of the postseason picture. Where do you have it? Again, you said you think the Padres will be a second place team and better than the Mets. So you do have the Padres in the playoffs?
I have them right on the cusp. It's just like I said, it's going to come down to the last 7 to 10 day games. That's where I see it. If the Padres can finish off hot, they're going to be in the playoffs. If they don't, they're not going to be. That's just kind of how I see it. It's just tough. I'm a Padre fan. There's a Padre podcast, so I'm going to say yes, I have them in the second place. But being realistically, it's going to come to the last week because I feel like all three of those teams are going to be right there. And it could be the Giants have a good last week, and then all of a sudden they're in second place, and the Diamondbacks and Padres are out. So I feel like it's going to be like that. So it's just hard to predict the West. But if I had to, and I had to, I got to throw money on it, or one of my kids die, I guess I'm going to let my kids die. No, I'll say the Padres, let's just go for the sake of argument, Padres in third place. But I feel like they have a good chance for second.
No question. There's a chance, and we'll see what happens. As we talked about, their trainer will be the MVP of the season, depending on how he performs and keeps guys healthy or not. I think is going to go a long way.
Now, Mike, I'll give Mike a shout out. I'll buy him dinner if they get to the playoffs because he's definitely an MVP.
All right, Heath, real quick, I want to go through the American League real quick as well. Obviously, these are all teams the Padres will be facing. Starting in the West, I do think it'll be a good race between the Rangers and Mariners. Rangers have a really good offense top to bottom, 1-9. Pitching staff, if they stay healthy, again, Jacob deGrom, Tyler Mahle have had some trouble staying healthy, as has Kumar Rocker, their young right-hander. But if they all stay healthy, they'll be in good shape. The Mariners, I think, are a team that, look, we know has a great pitching staff. The offense was just outright terrible last year. Bad approaches, bad everything. They brought in Edgar Martinez and Kevin Seitzer to be the hitting coaches. I think they'll be better this year. I have these two teams right up against it in the West. Rangers 89-73, Mariners 88-74. I think it'll come down to a game or two between the two of them. The Astros have long been the kings of the division and for a lot of ways, the kings of the American League. They traded Kyle Tucker. Alex Bregman left in free agency. They've had a lot of starting pitching injuries. I do think this is the year they fall back. They'll still be a winning record, 84-78. The A's are a popular surprise team. I think there are some good players to build with. I still think they're another year away. The starting pitching is a little bit light. You're asking Luis Severino and Jeffrey Springs to both give you 160, 170 plus innings, which is a bit of a stretch for me. And I think some of their younger arms, they need another year of experience. But there is talent here with Brent Rooker, Lawrence Butler, Jacob Wilson's a good young shortstop. And lastly, the Angels have them in last place again, 65-97. Similar deal where they have a couple of interesting good young players, Logan O'Hoppe, Zach Neto, but rather than going and getting the impact players they need in free agency, they keep spreading money around to mid-tier veterans who just won't make a meaningful difference. They've done this playbook year after year after year after year. I would have preferred to see them spend the money they spent on Yusei Kikuchi and Jorge Soler and Yohan Moncada and Travis d'Arnaud and all these guys and put it toward one of the main starting pitchers. I mean, they could have had Jack Flaherty for less than they got Yusei Kikuchi for, and I would have preferred that. So I think, again, the Angels are just kind of where they are. But I do think the West in the American League will be competitive. And the Padres are going to see the Mariners a lot this year. That's their rival for the Vetter Cup. I actually think that'll be an interesting matchup because again, the Rangers and Mariners to me are two teams that I think have a chance to win the West and maybe do some damage once they get into the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, DeGrom's coming back. If he stays healthy, the Rangers will definitely probably have the edge. The Marlins, I mean, the Mariners are they're a team like last year. They were really good. For some reason, they just didn't put together. I don't know if in the clubhouse they're not gelling. They're not doing things as a team. Their manager got fired or whatnot, and they were a really good team. And it feels like they're not going in the same direction. That's my thing in Seattle. For some reason, maybe they need to go to a Bad Bunny party or something like that and kind of hang out together and do some team parties. But I do agree the Astros, I think, are taking a step back. Alex being gone and Tucker being gone, and then whatchamacallit moving to the outfield that hasn't really looked
Altuve, yeah.
Moving to the outfield and it hasn't really looked that great in the outfield just yet. I think he'll be a solid outfielder, but I just feel like the Astros are going to take a step back. This is going to be the year they don't make the playoffs. Unless something crazy happens and Texas gets hurt, all their starting pitching gets hurt. But I kind of predict the Rangers to be there if they stay healthy, and if they not, they could be in the second place. Seattle, I want Seattle to be in first place. I'm rooting for Seattle to be in first place, but there's just something about it. They're a really good team, but they just haven't put it together for whatever reason. The last couple of years, it just, like I said, there's always, I'm big on a team coming together, the front office, the coaching staff, the players all going in the right direction, about being confident, being, there's no lies being told, and you believe in guys and you respect guys. And there's a funny feeling that that's not going on in Seattle for some reason. I don't know. I mean, hopefully Martinez comes in and helps out. And it's one of those things that, I don't know. It's just that weird gut feeling. They're a better team than they end up being every year. And you're just like, what's going on up there?
Well, I think the big issue there has been a real lack of communication from the front office to the clubhouse. We've seen rear its ugly head again and again. In 2021, the Mariners are right there in playoff contention. They trade Kendall Graveman, their closer, and the team absolutely was appalled. And for the general manager, Jerry DePaul, not to have the pulse of his team and understand what the reaction would be, shows there's a lack of communication, a lack of awareness that was problematic. 2023, same thing with Paul Sewald. Again, the Mariners are right there, and they trade their closer, who was beloved in the clubhouse. And yet again, the team was appalled. And it's something where there needs to be more communication, more feel, more understanding for the value of players in the clubhouse, and the Mariners have shown. And then last year, Scott Service was fired. He found out from the media. He didn't find out from the front office. He found out from the media that he had been fired. So there's a real communication issue from the front office to the clubhouse. And that's been a big problem. And Cal Raleigh after 2023 talked about it, where they need to add pieces. And the front office seems to be trading away pieces when they're close. They traded for Luis Castillo in 2022 and great things happened. Last year, they traded for Randy Arozarena and Justin Turner, but they needed more. And again, there's been a real disconnect. And ultimately, it is the general manager's responsibility, yes, to evaluate players, to evaluate trades, but also to understand the clubhouse dynamics, understand where your players are at, and be constantly in communication and have the pulse and the feel. And we have seen 3 of the last 4 years, there has been a really problematic lack of communication from the front office to the clubhouse. And that's something that they have to rectify.
Well, that's why you wonder what the owner and the GM are, talking about behind closed doors, and then what the GM is telling the players, or the owner telling the players, like, hey guys, we're all in, and then go do something because they don't like the car he drives, or don't like he blew one game, or I don't know what reason. So that's the thing I have in Seattle. It's just, I root for them to do well. They're just not doing well. Oakland's going to struggle because they're in a really crappy stadium, and they might do well because the ballpark is going to be interesting to watch. And then the Angels, Ron Washington over there is just he knows this is a 5-6 year plan to rebuild. And he's a smart enough guy. I've met him over the years where he understands that. I think last year he was kind of seeing what he has, what he can get out of guys. Now he's going to push guys and see what he has probably here and there. And then he's going to probably make some decisions after this year. And hopefully the organization lets him do that. But who knows what the Angels been doing. I mean, they go out and get big name guys like Rendon that didn't pan out. They get Albert Pujols that didn't pan out. Wilson that didn't pan out. It's all these different guys. So it's just been bad luck after bad luck the last couple of years. And I'm hoping Ron Washington's a great guy, and I'm hoping he can turn it around in a few more years, but he's going to need a couple more years to turn it around.
Yeah, no, there have been a lot of bad free agent signings at the top and also in the middle, the Matt Harveys, the Trevor Cahills. Yeah. It's been, and they're kind of doing the same thing over and over. And again, there's young talent here in Zach Neto, Logan O'Hoppe. If Nolan Shawnuel can add 25 pounds and develop some power, maybe. But they've got to figure some things out. This is still a pretty bad team. The Central is an interesting division. We talked about seeing in the NL West, all four teams had a chance. This is where I think all four teams in the AL Central at the top, Royals, Twins, Tigers, Guardians, have a chance. I went back and forth on this. I have Royals winning the division, but 88-74, Twins right behind them, 87-75, Tigers right there, 86-76. So top three teams all within a game of each other. I had the Guardians. I put 81-81 when I did this yesterday. When I was looking back at their lineup today, I'm like, I think I'm light on them. I actually think they have a chance to be more in that 85, 86, 87 win range too. So this is a really balanced, even division. I think the Twins have far and away the best lineup. I think the Tigers have far and away the best rotation. I think the Royals have kind of a nice balance of some really good position players and some really good pitchers. And the Guardians are always going to play good baseball. They're going to be well managed. They have some really good players, stars, of course, like Jose Ramirez. I do think the loss of Josh Naylor will hurt their offense quite a bit. And their rotation, though, has a few more questions than you typically expect from a Guardians rotation. So that's why I have them in fourth. But if we look up and the Guardians are the team that's in first place at 88-74, it wouldn't shock me. I think this is actually going to be the tightest division in baseball. And not because everyone's great, but more because, everyone has something and they're okay. And I think they're all fairly evenly matched.
Yeah, this is kind of like the National League West for me, except for, the White Sox or the Rockies. They're not going to be there. But literally, besides them, by the West having the Dodgers, the Central, there's no real clear winner. I mean, you like the Royals on paper, I think, are the best team, but I really think Detroit or Cleveland is going to be in second place. I just feel like the Twins are a good, solid team, but really, everything I've looked at, and I've looked at this for the last hour or so before the show, I literally would just roll a dice. Besides, take the White Sox out of it and just roll the dice, and whoever comes up first is my first place team. Whoever comes up second is my second and third and fourth. Just because they're good, solid teams. There's good parts about them. There's some bad parts about them, but the bad parts are not like horrible parts. Yeah. Cleveland, you kind of have, they're just a good, solid team that just wins. Detroit has some good young talent. They kind of showed up last year and they got real streaky. Are they going to do that again this year? Or are they going to be, a little haze? So maybe have you been third place? Twins, or that another team that I feel like is just streaky and just they can go off and win a bunch of games and then lose a bunch of games. The Royals have, on paper, they have a really good talent on paper and they got a good pitching staff, but are they going to show up? So, and here's the other aspect, like you said, with the Mets and the Padres, they're going to be playing each other all the time. So it's going to be a battle every game. So you're not going to really see a 90-win, team, 90 wins, because everybody's going to be beating up on everybody. And whoever comes out of there is going to be really battle tested, and they might have the chance to do something in the playoffs. But I'm just rolling the dice. I got no ideas. I'm literally closing my eyes and just picking a number with those guys, because it's like me winning the lottery if I'm picking somebody here.
Yeah, I could see these four really finishing in any order. The Twins intrigue me just because it's a really good lineup, and especially if everyone stays healthy. Royce Lewis and Brooks Lee are already hurt. But even without them, you look at their opening day lineup, it's still pretty darn good. The biggest thing, again, is those two, Carlos Correa, Byron Buxton, all these guys are super talented, but they all have health concerns. And if in some ways the Twins resemble the Padres a little bit in that if their top guys stay healthy, they have a chance to really do some damage and really, really be a team that scares some people, at least offensively. If they don't stay healthy, it could get real rough real fast. Rotation has some good pieces too. Pablo Lopez is a stud. Joe Ryan's a good pitcher. We saw Bailey Ober take a step. Chris Paddock, former Padre, can be serviceable as a number 4. And Simeon Woods Richardson has some good stuff. So I think the Twins have the highest upside of any team in this division, but it's just hard to get on board with Carlos Correa and Royce Lewis and Byron Buxton and Brooks Lee all staying healthy. If it happens, I think they're the best team. It's hard to have a ton of faith it'll happen given their injury track records.
Yeah, I agree with you in that aspect.
Yeah. So lastly, finishing up with the AL East here, the Yankees have taken some hits. They lost Juan Soto in free agency. Garrett Cole's out for the year after having Tommy John surgery. But they did make some good additions. They brought in Max Fried. They brought in Cody Bellinger. They brought in Devin Williams. Again, they've lost Giancarlo Stanton. He has elbow injuries after he says from swinging different bats. So they've had some big losses. They've also made some nice additions. When I look at the AL East, it's funny. So many people give the AL East kind of the, typical, it's the toughest division in baseball. It's really not this year. All these teams have some pretty big flaws and some talent, but I would say right now the best divisions in baseball are the NL East, the NL East, the NL West are both clearly better, more talented divisions than the AL East is, and the AL West is closer than I think a lot of people would like to admit. In the AL East, I think the AL East is at best the third best division in baseball this year. There's an argument it's the fourth. I have the Yankees winning the division at 92-70 in part because every team is flawed. And when I take a step back and still look at their lineup 1-9, it's still a pretty good lineup. And you still have a rotation with Max Fried, with Carlos Rodon, with Marcus Stroman. Luis Gil will be back in a few months. They still have a good bullpen with Williams at the back. I think this is a division championship team. I don't think they're a World Series caliber team, but I think they can win a division where every team is flawed.
Actually, I have the Yankees as third. I have the Red Sox winning the division, the Orioles in second, and then the Yankees, and then the Blue Jays and Rays.
Okay.
I think Alex Bregman is going to change the Red Sox a little bit. I know there's some issues going on, who's playing third and all that stuff, but I just think they have the attitude that they're going to win. And I think Baltimore is actually going to put it together. Okay. And, their young talent's actually going to show up and do well. And I just think the Yankees are just going to have too many injuries this year, and it's going to chalk up to injuries. That's where I kind of take it. And I think the Blue Jays are going to do well. I think they're going to be above 500, but maybe they can overtake the Yankees. But I just think the Yankees are going to have too many injuries this year. I really think that's what's going to happen.
It's very, very fair, and I don't think that's a crazy assessment. The Red Sox, to me, are an interesting club because they've added a lot of really good players. They add Garrett Crochet, they add Walker Buehler, they add Alex Bregman. This is the strongest Red Sox team we've seen in a few years. I think the main thing for me that I want to see is, are they going to play fundamentally sound baseball? We have seen the Red Sox consistently play horrible defense for years, where, right now you look at this team and on paper, there's, a pretty good lineup, especially when you consider they can call up Roman Anthony, they can call up Marcelo Meyer, Christian Campbell is going to be their opening day second baseman. The rotation, as soon as some guys get healthy at the back end, like Brian Bayo, there's talent here. The thing that concerns me is the Red Sox, look, it's not hard to see the teams that spend way too much time looking at an iPad and looking at a computer screen than actually on the field perfecting their craft. And the Red Sox have been one of those teams for years. Just defensively, the fundamentals have been terrible. Footwork, throwing accuracy, hitting cutoff men, throwing the right bases. It's been really, really hard to watch at times. And, my concern is, Jen McCaffrey with The Athletic did a really, really good article talking about the Red Sox and the changes they're undergoing under Craig Breslow. And a lot of it were the kind of things that are a little bit red flags, which is, hey, we're getting rid of our scouts. We're bringing third parties to determine what our personnel structure should be. We're focusing more and more technology and analysts and not putting as much emphasis onto what's going on the field. I think for me, I'm a little bit concerned that the Red Sox are going to be that team where they'll be good, but it won't add up because they're not going to do the little things well, that there's still going to be sloppy baseball. There's going to be a lack of focus and attentiveness and situational awareness that we've seen in this franchise for years. And just given sort of what the front office is talking about, they're not addressing it. And it's something they haven't addressed for years through multiple front offices, and that's problematic to me.
No, I agree, and I think they're going to play sloppy baseball, but, I'm getting ahead of myself, but I think Alex Bregman is going to be the AL MVP. Because how good he's going to do, and he's going to carry that team into the first place division, or first place in their division. So that's kind of where I see it. I think Alex Bregman is going to tear it up there and do really well, and he's going to be the third baseman. In the beginning, it's going to whatnot. It's he's going to have to start off really hot for that, maybe that all hoopla to kind of calm down or whatnot. But I just have a funny suspicion he's my AL MVP, that he's going to take the Red Sox to first place. But I think it's still going to be sloppy baseball. all they care about is offense. And you kind of see is everything they've talked about. It's offense, offense, offense. It's kind of like what the late 90 Yankees were. It was all offense, but they could play defense.
And they also had some pitching. I mean, they had David Wells, David
Oh,
Cohn.
yeah, but I feel like there's, the East is not that good. I mean, as much as, we might talk the Yankees or the Yankees, and the Blue Jays have young talent that are going to be free agencies. Baltimore has really young, the Rays are always doing their thing, but I just don't think the division. I think the division's gone south. And the American League, I think the Central's the best division, not the best teams, but the best, because they have 4 really good teams that could, if they win in the West or they win the East, any of those 4 teams are really competing for first place for those divisions. So it's just, that's kind of how I see it, where the East has kind of fallen off last year or two. And the American League used to be really good. In the last couple of years, you've kind of seen how they've kind of fallen off. You have 1 or 2 teams that are good and everybody else is just average. So I feel like Alex Bregman's going to take that team, but I do believe that they're going to be sloppy. I feel like they're not going to play defense. They're just going to try to outslug everybody and strike everybody out. And in Fenway, sometimes that works. They just have that, Fenway mystique about them that, it just might happen. But do I think they're going to get to the World Series? No. Do I think they're going to have a chance to win? No. I just think they're going to win the division.
That's right. And I do have them as a playoff team because I think there's so much talent on the field, and Alex Cora is a good manager. But, I get your point. And I think there are definitely scenarios in which you could see them really, really doing well. I would like to see them actually talk about and address what the issues have been. It doesn't seem like they are. The Orioles to me are a team that I am very concerned about their starting pitching. They lost Corbin Burns in free agency. Grayson Rodriguez is down. They have some decent arms. Again, I think Zach Eflin's a really good pitcher. Dean Kramer's solid for what he is. Charlie Morton's a crafty vet. Tomoyuki Sugano is a very, very successful veteran coming out of Japan. But they have a lot of guys who are 3s and 4s without Grayson Rodriguez healthy. And Kyle Bradish is hurt too. Without Grayson Rodriguez healthy, without Corbin Burns, I'm a little concerned about this rotation not having the kind of guys who you can roll out there and say, okay, we're winning today. The Yankees had that with Max Fried. The Red Sox had that with Garrett Crochet. Even to a degree, the Blue Jays had that with Kevin Gossman and Jose Barrios. I don't see that guy for the Orioles, and that concerns me, and that's why I have them down a little bit, even though they have a good young offense with a lot of options and depth. The lack of pitching is what concerns me. The lack of frontline pitching, I should say.
No, I hear you, but I'd rather take a bunch of number 2s and 3s than have a good number 1 and everybody else is 4s and 5s. So I just feel like they're a pretty good team. I just feel like they've been young. They've been kind of growing up together, and I feel like this is the year. And here's the thing. I told my son this last night. I said, if Baltimore doesn't do it this year and they're not like in second place or competing and get to the playoffs and do well in the playoffs, they need to get rid of some of the young guys and kind of go in a different direction, not keep these guys because it's not working. They're missing a piece of the puzzle or something. And maybe they need to take 2 pieces away to add one that makes, like in Alex Bregman, that I think like Alex makes the Red Sox that much better, where if he wasn't on the team, I would have the Red Sox not doing well this year. I really feel like he just has a new life, and I'm watching a little bit in spring training and stuff where I think can take the team, and he's that type of player that can put a team on his back and carry him. Where in Baltimore, I agree with you. There's a lot of young talent, but I don't think anybody can basically throw you on my back and like, let's go, let's win the next couple games, let's win the series. So
I think Adley Rutschman can be that guy. We've seen him offensively kind of struggle a little bit last year, but
I think he's really good, but I just don't think he's that type of player. There's great players, and then there's that Hall of Fame player, and that Hall of Fame player can throw you on the back and like, let's go.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's like Derek Jeter. If you look at Derek Jeter's numbers, he wasn't great with numbers, but he got the job done, and he riled everybody else up and going like, hey, let's go. Let's do this, back and forth. I mean, Tony Clark back in the day when he was with the Diamondbacks, he kind of did that too. He didn't have the offense. He didn't have the, numbers to back it up, but he was the guy behind the scenes getting everybody to play a little bit better, to be motivated. Even when you're, 2 runs down and it's like 2 innings to go, some guys are like, man, okay, I'm not going to have an at bat. We're going to lose this game. No. everybody in the clubhouse, everybody in the team needs to feel like we're going to win. That's the only way we can win. Even the last man on the totem pole, the 26th man, he has to believe that's not even playing. Hey, we're going to win and I'm going to help the team win. Even though he doesn't help the team win, they got to have that atmosphere. And if everybody in the clubhouse has that, then, and that's the great players, that some guys don't become Hall of Famers, but you knew that guy kept the team together. Kind of like when Seattle started trading away some of their players, that player was probably in the clubhouse rallying everybody. It was kind of like, the Padres, Ha-Seong Kim, even though Kim wasn't there or wasn't doing well, he was kind of, everybody loved him. He joked around, this and that, kept everybody loose. And, when you trade those guys, it's detriment to your team. So that's where Baltimore is kind of my MO, as in, if they don't win their first playoff series this year or win the division or in second, it's kind of like, yeah, they're a good team, but they're never going to amount to much unless you're going to have to go get one or two good key guys, but I don't see the organization doing that. So, but Baltimore, their pitching is a bunch of 2s and 3s, but here's the thing is,
well, I don't think they're even 2s and 3s. I think they're 3s and 4s, which is the concern. And I would also say
a little bit better than that, but it's just one of those things that I believe maybe the MO with the Baltimore is like, hey, let's win. If we're in this hunt, we have enough talent. We'll go out and get that number one guy that we need.
And that's the key we've seen with the Orioles is they have not been nearly aggressive enough in going and adding pieces. They were with Corbin Burns, and that was a testament to them. And you thought, okay, maybe now they are finally flipping the switch. One of the things I've talked about a lot with Mike Elias and his regime in Baltimore is they are a group that knows how to rebuild, but we have not seen that they know how to flip the switch from we're rebuilding to we're contending. They need to be more aggressive in acquiring frontline guys. They acquired Jack Flaherty at the deadline 2 years ago. It didn't work out, but it was a good sign they made the move. They acquired Corbin Burns, which was a really good move. And you're like, okay, maybe they're finally figuring it out that they need to be a little more aggressive and willing to trade some of their depth. And then at the deadline, instead of focusing on impact, they focused on years of control and way overpaid for Trevor Rogers, who's just okay, and gave up two really good young pieces in Connor Norby and Kyle Stowers. And again, it's always fun to me when GMs talk about, we've acquired so many years of control. The years of control don't matter if the player's not very good. At the end of the day, they needed to reassess what kind of players were acquiring and the impact level. It looked like they were getting better with the Burns acquisition, then they went backward at the deadline last year. I'm still not convinced this front office knows how to flip the switch to we are contenders now.
Well, I agree with you there. The front office needs to, they need to be, going after it where they've showed they're playing it safe. And I always think it's funny when you hear people go, yeah, you know how many years of control we got? Or, I don't think the Padres did that with, Tatis. They were like, hey, we have Tatis. They actually say the name instead of like, how many top prospects we got in that trade? Well, that means the top prospects aren't working out. It's always funny how they make it sound great, but it's not really great. And they're just trying to make themselves feel great. And that's where, like you said with the Red Sox, they're just throwing all these numbers out. And, hey, we're gonna get rid of these scouts, and we're gonna go over here, and we're gonna go technology because technology says I'm a great player, even though I hit 260. I hit 25 home runs and 80 RBIs, but we're losing. But I get on base, 80% of the time. Whoopee! I'm not scoring. We're not winning games. So I just think we're getting too far into on base percentage and the WAR. I hate when people talk about WAR and stuff like that because how about win?
It's a very flawed metric that does not accurately reflect players' individual abilities. It tries to mash together everything into one simplistic number that really can be manipulated based on what you're weighting. And I would argue that a lot of times what's being weighted is not accurate. Not to mention defensive metrics are an absolute disaster still and should not be trusted. And once that's factored in, it really throws everything off.
Bochy said it the best 2 years ago when he was with the Rangers. He said, all that information is great to help me make a baseball decision. And I think too many teams take that information and make a decision. And I really think the Dodgers, they might say they look at the numbers way too much, but really I think they make it. And then Dave Roberts is a baseball knowledge guy where I think he takes those numbers and helps them make a good baseball decision where it's not all about the numbers. And I feel like too many teams get caught up into the numbers. And I mean, I just look back at like when the Braves got, remember the outfielder from the Rays? It was a BJ Upton.
BJ Upton.
When they were like, he's a $160 million player and he hit 180. But they literally said, our numbers say he's going to be this. He's got potential of being this. And he was in Tampa, he was going down every year. And he just did horrible. And it was like American League to National League. You know, that's before we were really playing each other. And it went really south. And the Braves decided, we're not doing that again. We're going to go back to the old way and let's find some good players. And they did. And the Braves are doing great right now. So you have to take all that knowledge of today and use it. Like, you know, I'll use social media. Social media is great for all that knowledge, but if you use social media and you like they say, if you live on social media, you're going to be miserable because there's nothing ever sad on social media. And you just think everybody else's lives are perfect. I mean, that's not true. But if you take social media, it can help you. You can make money on it. You can have information on it. You can have fun times on it, but it's not your whole world. So
I think, you know, getting back to it, data is a part of the equation. It is not the whole equation. And I've talked about this extensively. The Dodgers have a robust data analytics group. They also have a full staff of scouts, a full player development department, and they use those numbers and give them to baseball people. Brandon Gomes, GM, former big leaguer. Will Rhymes, farm director, former big leaguer. Billy Gasparino, scouting director, longtime minor leaguer. You know, Andrew Friedman is known for his eye for talent as being, you know, a scouting talent. They do a really good job of using that information and blending it. And so I think that's really what most teams need to do. It's a blend. It's never the whole answer. Wrapping up the Blue Jays and Rays, just, you know, real quick. Again, the Blue Jays, they have good players at the top, Bo Bichette, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. But there's a depth issue there once you get to the bottom of the lineup and the back of the rotation as well. We'll see what Max Scherzer still has left. And then the Rays, again, I'm always a little light on them. I have them in last place, but I think a lot of it is potentially good rotation, concerned about injuries. The lineup has a chance to be one of the worst in baseball, but the Rays always outperform maybe their pure talent level because they play clean, fundamentally sound baseball, and they pitch, they play good defense, they come up with timely hits, and we'll see if they're able to surprise. All right, Heath. So
the Rays aren't going to do well because they have no roof.
Yes, they're also playing in a minor league park. It is not the best look that Major League Baseball has two teams playing in minor league parks this year in Oakland and Tampa Bay. That is something that is certainly not a great look. Heath, you alluded to a little bit earlier, just as we wrap up, we have come up with our standings predictions. Want to jump into our awards predictions. Starting with the National League, you know, MVP, Shohei Ohtani. Once again, I wanted to be creative and pick someone different, but at the end of the day, this is a truly unparalleled talent that we have not seen the likes of in Major League Baseball. And I think it's important that people really appreciate it. What we're witnessing with him is, you know, our grandparents talking about Willie Mays and Ted Williams, or if you're of a certain age, Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Joe DiMaggio. You know, literally every single season, Shohei Ohtani is doing things that have never been done before. Even as a position player only, went 50-50 last year. What we are seeing, this is a, you know, Michael Jordan, Wayne Gretzky in their peaks level of ability. And I think it's important that everyone truly appreciates what we're watching, because and not only has it not happened for 100 years, Babe Ruth didn't accomplish what Shohei Ohtani did as a two-way player. It's important to understand just how special this is. And I mean, you can speak to as an ex-player yourself. This is truly, again, I'm not exaggerating. This is Michael Jordan, Wayne Gretzky level, things we've never seen done before, you know, performance.
Yeah, it's an amazing to watch. It's kind of like the Babe Ruth and Hank Aaron and, you know, Willie Mays.
Yeah,
it's all the great guys. It's just this is, I think, it will change the game to a point, but it's going to have to trickle down. Shohei's going to have to be MVP for the next 5 years or something, because I remember growing up in high school, they didn't have POs, pitcher only. You had to pitch and you played a position, and occasionally you found one pitcher that was just really couldn't hit, and he became a PO. But now in the freshman team in high school have POs. They don't play positions, where you always had the stud player out there. You know, we'll probably say like Mookie Betts was probably the stud shortstop and pitcher back in the day, where, you know, Mahomes, you know, quarterback, he was the best pitcher and probably best player on the team. He could hit and throw, But as soon as you went to college, you had to pick one or the other, where Shohei, you didn't have to pick. So I'm kind of wanting to see in the next couple of years, and I'm hoping Shohei Ohtani wins the MVP for this reason, because we can see guys in high school and college hitting and pitching. And then in the minors doing that too, because it just turned into, well, you're the best pitcher, like Rick Ankiel back in the day. He was a great pitcher, but also a great hitter. Well, you're going to be a pitcher until he had the yips and couldn't throw strikes, but he pitched for 3 or 4, maybe 5 years, and then went back to hit and played like 10 years as a hitter. And it was kind of that aspect, but he always, I talked about him in some charity games a couple of years ago. He always wanted to see if he could make a comeback as just a pitcher, maybe as a reliever. He didn't have to be a starter. He actually in the charity games wanted to pitch an inning, and he actually did. He got 3 up, 3 down. But it was fun and exciting to see that, because he wanted to do that again. And Ohtani has kind of showed like, hey, I can hit and I can pitch, where the last couple of years it's turned. I mean, in high school, like I said, you have POs that I know they're pretty good hitters, but I mean, at 15, 16, you're making them a pitcher only. Some travel ball teams are doing that. It's like, this guy hasn't developed yet. All of a sudden, what if he grows up to a great hitter, but you're not even giving him the chance, so he doesn't even want to practice anymore? And then I believe that turns into arm injury, because the guy's only pitching. He's not playing other positions. And
no question.
It's this domino effect where I hope it turns around. And I really think, and I know he's a Dodger and it sucks, but it's one of those things that you have to admit that, like you said, people that saw Michael Jordan and people that saw LeBron James are always arguing who's the GOAT. Well, Michael Jordan, if you saw him, he changed the game. They used to have short shorts, they have long shorts. The dunking was something, passing, the dominance of, 6-year period, where LeBron is great, but he didn't really change the game except for, hey, free agency, let's all go to one team and win the championship. That's the way he changed the game, and free agency and all that stuff. But Ohtani, I think, is going to change the game, as in, hey, maybe this guy can pitch, or maybe this pitcher can hit. Because back in the day, Zach Greinke was a really good hitter. Why don't we use him as a DH just for a game to try it out, and then maybe not call somebody up or down or this and that. But so it's really fun to watch. It just sucks that he's a Yankee. I was really hoping that.
You mean Dodger?
Or yeah, he was a Dodger. Sorry, everybody's a Yankee in my day. But, it really sucks that he was a Dodger, and I was really hoping the Padres at least would have a chance. Peter was throwing up all this money. I was like, it'd be great to have him down there. I think we have a bigger Asian community than LA, but I could be wrong. But it's amazing to watch him. Anytime the Dodgers are on, I'm just, where is he in the lineup? I want to watch him hit. And I'm really intrigued. Every time he's going to pitch, I want to see, is he going to last this year? Is he only going to throw a couple innings this year? What if he turns out to be in a couple years? Maybe the Dodgers have a plan for this. He'll be their closer. Like he did in the World Baseball Classic. He'll hit, play position, or just DH, and then come in and throw Ched at the last inning. So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, he's going to change the game in a lot of aspects. Yeah.
So again, I have him as my national MVP. It was too hard to pick anyone else, as much as it's not creative. Went Zach Wheeler with the Phillies as my Cy Young Award. Skeens is a popular pick, and very deservedly so. I think Wheeler's going to have a little more innings that he's going to be able to throw, and that'll be a difference. And National League Rookie of the Year, I went Roki Sasaki with the Dodgers. Again, this was already the most talented pitcher in the world who was not in MLB. Now that he's here, I think he's going to dominate. I did pick a few just kind of like for fun, some dark horses, guys who are like off the radar, and like it'd be kind of fun. NL MVP dark horses, Corbin Carroll with the Diamondbacks. Cy Young, I mentioned Hunter Green. Spencer Schwellenbach with the Braves is great. NL Rookie of the Year, Thomas Segasi with the Cardinals. Carlsbad Kid is someone I like. So some fun dark horses, but realistically, Ohtani, Wheeler, Sasaki are my picks. Who do you have for your National League Award winners?
Well, MVP, I kind of have Ohtani to be in that. I kind of feel like if he stays healthy, he's going to win Cy Young. And it's going to be like he's going to run away with every trophy. But I got Paul Skeens probably going to do it. Rookie of the Year, the Japanese guy from the Dodgers.
Sasaki. Yeah.
Sasaki. I always pronounce their names wrong, so sorry about that. I think he's going to win Rookie of the Year, but I really think it's going to be Ohtani, and Paul Skeens is going to be the two main guys for pitchers, and the MVP is just going to be Ohtani. Dark horses, I'd like to say Jackson Merrill, just because I think he has a chance of, MVP, of surprising everybody. And he could, if he keeps that excitement, it's kind of what like young Tatis had the excitement until that, steroid scandal kind of went on. But I don't feel like he's been as exciting ever since. He hasn't been as happy. Maybe I'm just missing it at all. But and then dark horse for Cy Young, I don't really have one because I just see those two guys as dominant pitcher. I'm just gonna, I don't know. I just throw a name in a hat and say, here you go, you try. But yeah,
I think Cease is interesting to me. I think Dylan Cease actually is an interesting dark horse as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and he's a free agent. That sometimes you do a lot better on a free agency year.
Yeah, I think second year being in San Diego, having a full offseason. He came over last year, late spring training. I think having that full prep free agent year, I think he's going to have a really good year. Then over in the American League, for American League MVP, I went Julio Rodriguez with the Mariners. I think that the Mariners offense was just so bad last year. It was bad approaches, bad swings, bad everything, and the entire team, really, really struggled because of it. I think getting Edgar Martinez in there, getting Kevin Seitzer in there, they're going to be better. And Julio Rodriguez, I think, is going to have a big, big year where he has something to prove. The entire Mariners offense does. For Cy Young Award, I went back and forth. I went Crochet with the Red Sox just because I think it's just dominant stuff. And I think he's going to be, in a big market, winning games where a lot of people are going to be paying attention. So I went Garrett Crochet there. Rookie of the year, I went Jackson Jobe with the Tigers. The Tigers have a really, really good staff with Tarek Skubal. Bring back Jack Flaherty is great. Reese Olson's probably the best pitcher most people have never heard of. Casey Mize is figuring it out a little bit. And, Jackson Jobe is just a super talented young kid. So those were my award picks in the American League. How about you? You mentioned you have Alex Bregman as the MVP.
Alex Bregman is MVP. I think Jackson will win Rookie of the Year. And then my son thinks it's a dark horse, but Texas. Why am I drawing a blank right now? Texas pitcher. It's kind of DeGrom. I feel like DeGrom's going to come back and win Cy Young. That's kind of my guy winning because he's been not healthy, and I feel like him seeing Texas win the World Series when he got hurt right away, and then last year really not pitching very much at all. And just I feel like he's a smarter pitcher, but has phenomenal stuff. Maybe he realizes he doesn't need to throw 100 miles an hour every single pitch. He can just throw 95 and then can't wrap it up to 101. So I feel like DeGrom is going to be the Cy Young Award winner this year in the American League. And I think it'll help Texas kind of, do really well. But I think Alex Bregman is going to do really well in Boston and win the MVP. So that's kind of my picks right there. I don't have a lot for the AL. I don't really have any dark horses right there just because, I don't know, me and my son talk a lot of National League baseball. I'm trying to get more into the NL or the AL. So it's just, that's all I'd have to say, I guess.
Yeah, no, we'll say. And again, a couple just dark horses I have, again, guys who are kind of off the radar. MVP, Adley Rutschman, Baltimore, Bo Bichette in Toronto, Cy Young, Framber Valdez in Houston, Cole Reagans in Kansas City. Rookie of the year, I went Jacob Wilson, shortstop for the A's, and Sean Burke with the White Sox, pitcher. So again, these are dark horses. Realistically, I think the other guys will probably take it, but we'll see what happens. Heath, it's been a lot of fun. We've got an hour and a half of great stuff here previewing the 2025 season, and we'll be previewing the Padres more in depth later this week. And then I'll be down at Petco Park covering the opener. It's a great week of baseball and exciting times all around.
It's always exciting this week.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Well, that'll do it for another episode of Friar Territory here on the Foul Territory Network. Go ahead and give us a review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, whatever platform you're listening on. We'd love to hear from you. For Heath Bell, I'm Kyle Glaser. Thanks for watching and listening. See you this week.